And since we first met Tonika Lewis Johnson in 2020, she has expanded the Folded Map project, adding workshops, a play, and a movie. On top of all that, she collaborated with sociologist Maria Krysan to create the Don't Go project. That's a series of interviews with 30 people who confronted and eventually combated harmful narratives about Chicago's South and West sides. Now, joining us now are the project's creator and some participants. Adrienne Hawthorne, who grew up in West Dundee and took a wrong exit visiting her grandparents on the way to Beverly. She's now building bridges between folks on the South and her North Side shop. Jerry Kaufman, whose seminary education and work in social justice helped him venture beyond his comfort zone in Hyde Park to hanging out in Inglewood. Tiana Morgan, who grew up in Inglewood and has become an empowered defender of the South Side after her first day of college when she was told to avoid the South Side. And the artist and creator behind the Folded Map Project and the Don't Go Project, Tonika Lewis Johnson. Thanks to you all for joining us. Tiana, let's start with you, please. You grew up in Inglewood. You went to college on the South Side at IIT. And on your first day there, you began to hear some messaging that was said frequently to a lot of students and their families there, and that was to be careful or avoid the South Side. What was your reaction to that messaging?
Yeah, it was interesting because I was there with my mom. It was during orientation. So there was a lot of people in the room, and IIT is a very ethnically diverse, meaning they have people from all over, a lot of Asians, Indians, different ethnicities outside of the US. So you have a lot of different people coming to the school that's not from Chicago, and you're hearing pretty much do not go outside of the boundaries of IIT. I went to school at Dunbar High School, so I went to school right down the street, and it was disheartening. And I had my mother with me, and I can tell that she was upset about it because the school resides on the South Side, so to tell people not to go outside of the boundaries is you would expect a little bit more collaboration.
Now, Adrienne, on the flip side of that, you got lost on a drive to visit your grandparents in Bridgeport. Tell us, you got off the expressway, you took the wrong exit, and you called them. Tell us what their reaction was when they learned where you were.
They were terrified, angry, worried for my safety. I definitely sensed that I had done something wrong in that moment. So I took a mental note not to get off at that exit ever again.
Okay, and we're going to come back to how you're, using that experience today. Jerry Kaufman, I want to get you in here. You grew up in Dalton, but you moved out as Black people were moving into the area. This is when you were younger, moving with your family. And among the words that you heard used by other families at the time was that you all had, quote, escaped. What did you make of that term at the time, and how do you look back on it now?
Yeah, well, at the time I was quite young, so some of that didn't really click at the time, but it was really as I got older and would hear from people that were my age who later on in high school and beyond got out, and other families that used this language about getting out. For me, to be honest, at the time, it wasn't strange. It was what I'd heard, and even at the time, for me personally, had kind of viewed it myself. It wasn't until later in life that I had changed the way that I was thinking about things, that my own language about it changed. But once I began to hear people use that language, especially as I got older, and especially now being on the South Side, and I'm a sociologist, studied here at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park, and so hearing that sort of language really just highlights how people view living near and around Black folks and what that means for them. And so the idea of escaping or getting out is troubling because it suggests that folks have made it out, and it also suggests that there's something left behind that's undesirable. And that's all, became really troubling as I got older and began to process that.
It wasn't until you were an adult, now living in Hyde Park, as you said, that you started to venture out into Inglewood and sort of push back against those don't go narratives. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, my first trip out, I've been in Hyde Park for a few years, and as a graduate student at the University of Chicago, similar to Tiana's story, there's this implicit and explicit narrative about not leaving the safety confines of Hyde Park. And I, as someone, honestly, I studied, my research was on race and ethnicity and segregation and things like that. And I just knew I wanted to venture out. I wanted to kind of put my money where my mouth was. And I made a bus ride south down Cottage Grove, got on a bus where I was the only white person on the bus, which was fine. I live in Hyde Park. That wasn't itself extraordinary, but ventured out and got off at a stop down Cottage and had an experience of standing there as this white guy in this neighborhood that wasn't mine, with this backdrop of this larger narrative about don't go to the South Side, it's dangerous, something's going to happen to you. So as I stood on this intersection with my laptop in my bag and some folks across the way at a gas station hanging out, I had some real in my own head, this narrative was surging through my head about my safety and my well-being. But after that, I just knew that I wanted to make sure that I was living my life in ways that countered that narrative.
And now, Tonika, as part of this firsthand segregation initiative, you did a firsthand talk for WTTW, which can be streamed at WTTW.com/firsthand. But let's take a look at a bit of what you had to say in that talk.
I started high school in 1993. I started going to Lane Tech High School, 15 miles north of Inglewood, a selective enrollment high school that had a multiracial student body of 4,000 students. And in order to get to school on time by 8 o'clock, I would have to be at the bus stop on 62nd and Loomis by 5:45 a.m.
That is early. Tonika, you had your aha moment in those high school days when you met people from all different backgrounds. What was it that compelled you later on to create the Folded Map Project and then the Don't Go Project?
Well, primarily because of that high school experience, I built long-lasting friendships with people of many different races, nationalities, and I knew the value. I had experienced the value of Chicago's diversity, and it was so many points in my life, also being an artist in the arts community where, diversity does exist and the interactions exist. I wanted to replicate that. I thought so many times, like, my friends here would get along with my friends there, and if they could meet each other. And so all of that kind of synthesized into my Folded Map Project, where I literally did just that. I brought people together who had a commonality. And so that's what I took away from my high school experience, is that, well, if all of these people get along with me and we have things in common, then create space for them to also meet each other.
Surely they can also all get along with each other to some degree. Tiana, what about for you? When was it that you realized just how segregated the city really is?
Yeah, I think it was after my college experience. So I did live in Hyde Park as well, Jerry, and just moving around the city and realizing just how broken up the city is. Everybody have their own little areas, and you find very few communities where people are together, where you have different races living together. It's very few in Chicago, and I found that very different compared to some of the other cities that I've been to. After traveling a little bit more, getting out of Chicago, I've definitely noticed that.
And Adrian, do you think your parents and grandparents at the time, do you think they were being protective of you, once you learned you had made that mistake with taking the wrong exit? And what was it that you felt they were probably protecting you from?
I mean, I feel like they were just being overprotective, but they're buying into the larger narrative that they'd been told. And it was never really clear what would happen if you got off at the wrong exit or if you were hanging out in the South Side, but I got the impression it was dangerous and something bad would happen, and to just not even take that chance.
And Adrian, since participating in this project, give us a quick sense of how you sort of participate in changing the narrative.
So since this project, I've gone to the South Side a few times. I've seen for myself that the things that, the don't go to the South Side narrative is not true. And I've been trying to unlearn that behavior. I've I have a storefront here on the north side, and for a while I was inviting Black artists to come to my shop and show their work and sell their work so that they could see my neighborhood, but also so my neighbors could meet them and start to maybe form some relationships between North and South Side and break up the segregation and the narrative that has been so prominent in the city.
And Tonika, we're almost out of time, but obviously you've been all over Chicago covering what segregation looks like in this city. Give us a quick sense of, there are two sides of the coin, white flight versus gentrification, and what happens.
Oh, it's very simple. It's who the dollars follow. So it's not the people who move into the neighborhood, it's who puts the amenities there for the soon to come residents. So I would like for all of us to unite and hold our elected officials and our local government accountable, because investment should not follow one population, which in Chicago is generally young white professionals. And I think we all know that. And instead of getting angry at the gentrifiers, I want us to come together and actually get angry at the developers and investments that happen as a result of seeing the population shift.
Okay, that's where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to Tonika Lewis Johnson, Tiana Morgan, Adrienne Hawthorne, and Jerry Kaufman.